When I was 3, my grandpa would pull me up to sit in his lap on his favorite leather chair. I remember him as kind and gentle, but I also remember him being too loving. I always thought, is this normal? But no one seemed to notice my grandpa loving me, and everything seemed like this was normal. But it still didn't feel right. My grandpa would rub my back and stroke my hair, then put his hand under my shirt and fingers down into my pants against my bare skin. He would always whisper to me, "This will be our little secret, okay?" As I grew older, I never felt fully comfortable with my grandpa, but I didn't really realize what his actions were until the 6th grade. In class, a teacher taught us about violations of our physical bodies and consent. How awful, I thought. I'm so lucky that the boys in my school don't try to do that to me. Then, the teacher talked about physical contact that was inappropriate. It was like she was working off a list of what my grandpa would do to me. I couldn't believe it. It never crossed my mind that what my grandpa was doing was exactly what my teacher had described. It explained why I always felt uncomfortable, even though he was supposedly doing a loving gesture. On Thanksgiving break that year, just like we always did, my family celebrated at my grandparents' house. I was doing some homework at my grandma's computer when my grandpa came in and started rubbing my shoulders. He moved his hands lower over my chest, and I didn't say anything to him. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. I took my books and tried to leave, but he pulled me back. He was old and not too strong, so I pushed past him, ran, and hid in the laundry room. I watched YouTube videos on my iPad, just any random thing, to take my mind off what just happened. It didn't work, and I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Was I overreacting? It dawned on me that our whole relationship had been built upon this. He didn't love me because I was his beloved granddaughter, but because I was so helpless and repeatable. I was upset, more than the physical discomfort of being touched in ways I didn't like. There was the emotion of realizing that someone who loved me was actually damaging me. My mother came into the laundry room and found me sitting on the floor. She looked at me and said, "Where have you been? We've been looking for you." I couldn't form words. Instead, I managed to say, "Grandpa," and then I pointed at my chest to show what had happened. My mom's face dropped, then got angry, then she softened. "That is not okay," she said. "Thank you for telling me." Maybe my mom thought it was a one-time thing. Maybe it was too much for her to face on her own. But afterward, it was like Mom forgot. Nothing changed. I began wondering if I was being overly dramatic, and if this was a normal thing across all families. I didn't want to ask my friends because I didn't want to sound gross or start rumors if I was wrong. But when Christmas rolled around, I became more and more anxious about our next family gathering, so I faked feeling sick. I forced myself to throw up so my parents wouldn't make me go. My parents believed it, so they let me stay home. That worked, but not for very long. The next family gathering came, and I was told a few hours before. I didn't have enough time to fake being sick, so I went, and my grandpa did it again. No one suspected a thing, and all through dinner, I was shaken, afraid to look anyone, let alone him, in the eyes. But when I glanced over, all I saw was a frail, harmless old man. It seemed like no one noticed or suspected a thing. I thought the mistreatment would stop, and it didn't. When I got home, I cried. I figured out harming myself would relieve the emotional burden. If I hurt physically, then that took the focus away from thinking about the mistreatment. This continued into 7th grade, and so did the cutting. My arms were covered with scars, so I hid them under long sleeves. Over time, I realized my thighs would be much easier to hide with leggings, so I moved to that part of my body. But as much as I tried to hide it, people noticed. First, it was just friends, and I could lie to them, and they believed me. My mom and dad were the last. They believed some of the excuses at first, but when the scars didn't go away, they made me go to a therapist. I didn't like the therapist at first. I was diagnosed with serious mental disorders. I threw myself into my schoolwork to avoid thinking of other things, and my life became dull. I talked to people with issues like mine. Instead of going for my thighs, I went for my wrist. There was a lot of bleeding, and that scared me. I tried to bandage my wrist, but that didn't fix it. I texted my friend and told her what had happened. She had been mistreated too, and I thought she'd understand the best. When I returned to school, I wasn't able to put on my cheerful mask like I normally did. My friends were concerned. They tried to cheer me up, but after a while, they saw it wasn't really doing anything, and so they stopped. It made me feel a bit better to know they knew about my situation and that they cared. But I wasn't any fun to be around, so even though my heart was broken, I understood why they stopped texting and hanging around. They didn't understand that I just wasn't myself. My therapist said I needed to work on 3 things. First, I need to find other ways to cope with stress and angst. And just talking to her about it was such a big help to combat these. Second, I need to seek out others that supported me. I had my friends for that. I made more of an effort to connect with them, even if it was just a text here and there. And third, I need to get out of any bad relationships. This one wasn't so easy. It was my grandpa. You can stop being friends with people, but you can't stop being family with someone. It was hard, but eventually, I managed to switch from cutting to flicking myself with a rubber band around my wrist. It took so much work, more than I ever thought I could do, but I am very proud of where I have gotten. Then I started to keep a diary to hold my long rants. At the end of every entry, I made sure to put one thing I was grateful for, and I noticed there were many things I took for granted. I kept texting my friends, and slowly but surely, I started opening up more and returning to my old self. I confronted my parents directly about what my grandpa had done, and they said I never had to see him again. What started out as a terrible secret with my grandfather turned into a personal secret that messed me up for a while. But since I've been more open, I've been getting better. It's been long and it's been difficult, but I'm feeling so much more alive now. I know I would not be alive at all right now if it weren't for my therapist and my friends. I know I put my friends through a hard time, but they were true friends and are still in my life. And though I know that anything might set me off, and I'm always making sure it doesn't happen, I haven't harmed myself for a few weeks now.